We'll just officially start the meeting and then I can say a few words about how the evening will progress. I'm going to call us to order. This is a special open meeting of council and it is 5 o'clock. The town of Smithers acknowledges the Gitumden clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose unceded traditional territory we live, work, and play. The public is notified that the meeting is being recorded and webcast, a notice of which is on the bulletin board outside these chambers. Council, may I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Rabin, all in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Alrighty. So we're going to begin this evening with the public comment period. When the time comes, if you wish to speak, you can come to the delegation table, press the button on the microphone platform. If it turns red, the mic is live. When you do that, please introduce yourself and the community of residents for the record, for the clerk. So we do have one subject on the agenda tonight, and that is the proposal for the Heart and Hearth program, which proposes a shelter that would operate in the building that we call the Old Fabrications Building. So in the public comment period, there is 3 minutes per person. I'm not going to have an iron fist about this, but I'm going to urge you not to be doing extended speech making. We do have a few people in the gallery, not so many, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak if they choose. So we'll just give you a signal if you're kind of going beyond that 3 minute by much. And then further to that, we do have the one subject and people may have different perspectives. So when someone is speaking, I urge you to give them attention and hear what they're saying. Let's offer and afford each other respect when we're sharing opinions. This is, for many is going to be an emotional subject. So we're going to hear each other with respect and give that time, and council will be listening closely to what you have to say. Once everyone who wants to speak has spoken, we will move on to a presentation. We have representatives from BC Housing who will describe the presentation, what is proposed for the shelter. After that, council may have questions for the representatives of BC Housing. We have a staff report and we will move on to our discussion and decision making. During the public comment period, it isn't a back and forth with council. We will hear from you. We are going to listen to you, but we won't be engaging in debate with you. So the public speaking opportunity is your chance to provide us with your thoughts at this moment in time on the subject in front of us, but we won't be engaging. So if you're asking us questions and looking for feedback, that will come later when we're in the point of decision making. So I hope all of that makes sense to the folks that are in the gallery. And again, thank you for taking time to be here. Mr. Dewar, just anything forgotten? Mr. Schroeder? Okay. So then we're at that period where we're at the public comment period. And if anyone would like to speak, I invite you now to come to the delegation table, turn on the microphone, state your name and your community of residence. This is the moment. Someone has to be first, so thank you. Yep, and just you can have a seat there, push the chair back. You're welcome to be comfortable, and over to you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Katie Zakowski. I am a resident of Smithers. I'm a proud homeowner. I am pulling up my notes. Okay. So I know that the meeting is essentially about the shelter, but oftentimes the topic of substance use comes up. And so that is why I am here to share my specific knowledge about that. I'm a registered nurse. I work at the Oak Clinic downtown. My job is basically to assess folks who have opioid use disorder and prescribe medication and support them in achieving their version of recovery. And so the medication that I prescribe is evidence-based. It is very universally accepted. It is when people say people should stop using substances, this is the medication that people are thinking about. And so I actually had the unique opportunity with the past winter's warming shelter being open, they invited me to do drop-in clinics twice a week for people that were staying at the shelter. And so what this offered was, in addition to a new level of stability with the people having housing at the shelter, they were also able to regularly meet with me. And if there was something that I was not able to support them with, I could refer them and directly connect them to a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor to support them with their addiction needs. This was incredibly successful. I had 10 clients connect regularly with the clinic that were not regularly connecting before the warming shelter. People were, in addition to having shelter, housing, food, warmth, they were having direct access to addiction medicine, something that even though it was available in the community for one reason or another, they were not able to access that regularly and achieve stability before. My point in saying this now is, unfortunately, with the shelter being closed this at the end of March, I've had a lot of fall off with clients, that instability, that loss of housing, that loss of safety and comfort. It's been very challenging to be able to connect regularly with clients. And not only am I providing like addiction medicine support, but I'm also providing support for public health. So that's testing folks for transmissible diseases, that sort of thing. So I'm in huge favor of the temporary shelter, just because based on previous experiences in Smithers this past winter, they have had the opportunity, like people that have been staying there have had the opportunity to connect with me. And this is rambling at that point, but yeah. Is that my timer?
That sounded like a timer.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. And anyone else? I'm hesitating just in case someone's a bit shy. Okay. We will move on then, if there's no one else that wishes to speak. And understand, please, that this is the only speaking opportunity. Okay. All right, in that case, I'm going to note that we have received letters and they are in the agenda package. Ms. McKinley, were there packages available for the public? Excuse me, I'm sorry, I just didn't quite hear you.
There's always two at the front.
Okay. So we did have letters that were received from C. Marco of Smithers, W. and T. Morkel, and W. Morkel. And I'm just going to ask Mr. Schroeder if we received any other letters, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We did receive one additional letter after the printing deadline for the agenda, and I'm happy to read that into the agenda, into the record for council.
Please do.
Thank you, Mayor. Letter dated June 16th, 2025. Dear Mayor and Council, I am writing in regards to the town hall meeting tonight, as I'm not sure I can make it in person. I would like to voice my opposition to having a permanent shelter in the old fabrications building until the new large building complex near Goodacre Place is built. I realize it will save the town of Smithers residents money, in that the BC government will be funding this shelter. And in doing so, it will relieve some of the financial pressure of the local taxpayers' money. Why are there two sets of rules? Law-abiding citizens have to bear the brunt of the cost of supporting those who don't want to work and follow rules. The standards are exceptionally high for law-abiding citizens. Just try working with the town's building code enforcement. Hardworking young adults are having a hard time affording a house. On top of that, the taxes they have to pay make it almost impossible to live in them. Our town and province are spending money trying to address the very problems they are creating. Instead of promoting development and industry, their priorities seem to be climate activism and enabling drug addiction. Smithers used to be a very pleasant place to raise a family. Now families don't dare shop on Main Street. Why do some residents get free housing and free meals and others have to provide for themselves? There are already supports in place for those with disabilities. Why are some allowed to openly use drugs while we discourage it to our children? Why do we have campaigns against smoking and then open the doors wide to pot shops in every town and reserve? On the surface, it seems like providing shelter with meals is the compassionate thing to do. In reality, it is harmful. You are in reality enabling those who are struggling to be trapped in a harmful life cycle. BC Housing should be held liable for those allowing these people to harm themselves and in many situations also neglecting care for their families. Just because one court case said that the municipalities have to provide a place for people to camp, it doesn't mean we need to have a spot for them in our downtown with all the services. The more we provide, the more we will encourage others to join in. Please be consistent in applying the same rules to all citizens and in doing so, valuing all citizens. Thank you, Ruth Breedenhoff, Smithers, BC.
Thanks, Mr. Schroeder. Okay, where we're at then is the delegation section, and I'm going to invite the representatives from BC Housing to the delegation table, and we will hear from you. Come on up, please. And though we have met before, I'll just invite you as well to introduce yourselves for the record, and then we'll hear your presentation.
Just press it. Good. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors. Thank you for having BC Housing today on the agenda. And my name's Amy Wong. I'm Director for Regional Development at BC Housing for the Development Strategies Division. Me and my team look after the North Region, and I hand it over to my colleague, Terry.
Thank you, Amy.
Terry, can you just turn your mic on, please?
I can. It'll work much better that way. Thank you. Yes, thanks for having us. I'm Terry Waterhouse. I'm the Regional Director for Operations for BC Housing in the Northern Region. And Amy's team, as she said, does the development of all of our facilities, and my team ensures efficient operations of the facilities once they're built. And we work together to provide projects like the one we'll be proposing today.
So today we're bringing forward our proposed plan, and we have a PowerPoint presentation tonight. Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to have our territory acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we're in the area discussing today is situated on the traditional territory of the Wet'suwet'en and Wet'suwet'en First Nations. I also like to acknowledge the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs for selecting Smithers as a community to provide the opportunity for Heart and Hearth housing. Also like to acknowledge the work of Mayor and Council and your motion that you had put forward to staff to bring back this proposal and have a in-depth understanding of what the shelter plan will look like. Also want to acknowledge and thank community members who have spent their time to come to the open house that we had last month to provide their feedback, their thoughts, and their perspectives. We walked away hearing more of what the thoughts and concerns were. So thank you for taking the time to your Smither community members. So tonight we're here to respond to the motion that was put forward in providing a more detailed shelter plan. Homelessness in Smithers, we do a point in time count. The most latest one was done in April 2025. That pit count is what we call it, point in time. 77 people were identified as experiencing homelessness. Although it is a count that only happens in a 24-hour survey period, typically it's considered lower than the actual numbers. In that count, it also provided, we were able to provide a breakdown of 35% of an increase from the previous count that was done in 2023. 81% of those surveyed have been experiencing homelessness for more than a year, and 53% surveyed said they've always been in the community.
One of the goals of BC Housing is to move individuals from homelessness into housing. We want the individuals that we identify through the pit count and other means to be placed within secure, safe housing along a continuum that provides the types of services they need to move them first from being unsheltered into shelters, which traditionally or typically would be the first entry where individuals who had been formerly homeless start to receive services and try to stabilize those individuals so that they continue to move along that continuum from a shelter into transitional and supportive housing. The goal, and we don't show it on this slide here, is that beyond that, we would move individuals from that supportive housing. And so we do have an articulated pathway, and Heart and Hearth is the program that we use to provide the resources that are needed to identify the individuals, to do the outreach, to do the work that we need to assist them, to move them into shelter, to then move them into supportive housing. As Mayor and Council know, until recently, the continuum of services didn't really exist in Smithers. And so, but that has started to shift. You now have the Good Acres Supportive Housing Facility. And through this proposal, if council approves the shelter plan and the temporary shelter, you would have a shelter in place for the period between now and when we bring additional shelter and supportive housing units on when the Alfred Avenue facility is finished. At that point, Smithers would have a much more rigorous set of resources and be able to have a continue to move people into shelter, into housing, and ideally on to more independent forms of housing. As I said, Heart and Hearth is the program that we use. It's got two pieces of work to it. First is the HEART program. And what this is really about is the coordination on the ground of the type of outreach and the services that we need to identify who the individuals are who are homeless, who are in need of housing, to work with them for outreach workers, for example, to start to build the relationships, to do the type of assessments that we can determine what their needs are, and then through that facilitate moving them into shelters and into transitional housing. So HEART is a commitment, it's a program of work, and it's a funded program. Hearth is the complementary program, and it is the one that builds the resources. So really you can sort of see the duality of BC Housing at work. The team that I am lucky enough to direct and work with does the HEART work, where we do the process pieces, we do the operations, and Amy's team does the development of the temporary housing that allows us to move people into that. So Heart and Hearth is really about services and housing. There's a program framework that comes with Heart and Hearth. And one of the real benefits with Heart and Hearth is it comes with a much more comprehensive set of resources for providing the housing. It has the resources that allows us to have outreach workers to provide those kind of teams and staff the resources, but it also allows us to be able to afford to put a rigorous set of standards and a rigorous program framework in place. And we outline here on this slide the 4 key elements that come with Heart and Hearth. First, we ensure a rigorous process for determining who the operator would be for any proposed housing facility. We create with that operator and with the community what we call an operations management plan. That takes what our commitment is to providing those resources, turns it into an operating agreement, which the municipality would be part of and fully understand. Within that operating agreement, we lay out our requirements for an operator, how they will operate, what the standards will be, what the policies will be, what the procedures will be in operating that housing facility. We also include what we call neighborhood inclusion and community integration. This is a plan for the operator, our staff, and as well as other partners in the community to work together to ensure that in the development of the housing and in the operation of the housing, we provide an opportunity for community members to be included in the planning, the operations. It's a table, a place where people can bring forward concerns, ideas, thoughts about how that could happen. it's important for us to notice that when in the temporary winter shelter, it doesn't come with those kind of resources. It's much sort of a more basic set of services. But with Heart and Hearth and with our proposal to you, we would include that neighborhood inclusion and community integration planning. And then we have governance of the work is also a key part. You'll notice within the shelter plan, for example, we not only lay out what the operations management plan would look like, but we also provide in there a draft of what's called a letter of a commitment. So if council approves moving forward, we would provide that letter of commitment to council. We would say, these are our obligations and our commitments. This is what we as BC Housing commit to you as a municipality going forward. And typically that letter is signed by a senior management representative from BC Housing, as well as an identified senior representative from the municipality. That's included in the program framework as well. And back to Amy, we'll talk now a little bit about the community engagement we did within your community.
Thank you, Terry. I think I heard him say that he's the heart, right? And I'm the hearth, so.
Yeah.
As part of the proposed plan, BC Housing wanted to make sure we carried out community feedback. We wanted to have engagement with the community, have an opportunity for the community to share their thoughts, and also for us to share what the proposed program meant, what it looks like, what was part of it, what does it include. So we wanted to stretch out and make sure everyone had an opportunity to come and listen and also share their thoughts. So 130 letters went out inviting members of Wet'suwet'en and Wet'suwet'en Nation. 340 letters were mailed out to the immediate neighborhood and businesses of 200 meters. At our community open house that was held on May 13th, there was 76 attendees. Also 9 attendees on the online Q&A that we had the following week after the open house. And then also we had 70 visitors on our BC Housing Project webpage, and also 4 email inquiries. We want to make sure we had different platforms for folks to send in their questions, and we did that in person, had another Q&A, and also made sure that on the internet we had internet information. So out of the various engagement sessions, we heard some key themes. These are the concerns that we heard. We heard that there was limited parking when the shelter was operating in the winter. There was concerns about the project, space planning and how it looked and construction. There was concerns about renovations and the upgrade cost, and shelter guests and the services. Also site storage, both inside and outside. There was also common concerns about site security, safety, and the available health services, the impact it may have on property values, and Smithern Town Council approvals and final considerations. Of that, we took those concerns and sought where we could respond with the concerns we heard. So we had 3 key outcomes. Following the community feedback, we consulted with Town of Smithers on May 26th, and we plan to include new paint, wooden accents and landscaping in the proposed exterior improvements, again, to respond to people's concerns on how it was looking on the exterior. We also heard that parking was an issue, so we explored, and we will continue to explore with the Town of Smithers the possibility of providing designated parking for staff and deliveries. The third outcome was including both interior and outdoor storage spaces for guests. So we'll ensure that there's allocation of these spaces, and the operator will also be part of managing these storage areas. Site selection. So the proposed site is 3892 3rd Avenue. And why this location and how did we land here? BC Housing created a long list of properties that were either leasable or for sale. And we created a criteria and then did a thorough analysis evenly on all the sites so that we could be going through each site would go through the same criteria. And what were the criterias? We wanted to make sure that the location was close to services, including transit, grocery stores, and community supports. We needed to ensure the right size and condition to operate as a shelter. And previously, it was also used as the temporary winter shelter, which operated until March 31st this past spring. And one other key criteria was it needed to meet the timeline needs, considering costs, the zoning, the required permits, so that we could have the building operating winter 2026 and have available resources for folks when the cold winter weather comes. Sorry, if I can go back to the last slide. To the right here, this is the proposed plan. And I just want to note, this is a building rendering only, and it could be subject to change. But we did hear the concerns and we're working towards, meeting those concerns and towards the sentiment of those concerns we heard. Such finalization of the plans and renovations is going to still be subject to Town of Smithers permit processes and obviously meeting code requirements and any life and safety considerations for egress and ingress requirements. This is the pros plan. As you can see, on the corner, on the left-hand side, we're proposing that the front access be there, right on the corner there where that lamppost is on the left. This rendering didn't show it. However, we have heard more concerns about just, ensuring there's privacy. So right where the two cars are parked between the fence line and the building, we're proposing to have cantilevers there to ensure that there is additional privacy. Next slide. Thank you. So the building upgrades that are being proposed is to facilitate 25 beds of year-round space. There's also going to be common space and program areas. We also propose to upgrade the kitchen and washrooms. And then, as noted earlier, we're going to do some exterior improvements, which includes fresh paint, landscaping, fencing. We're proposing to do the 8-foot fence, which is permitted under the bylaws, covered outdoor common area and parking, additional indoor and outdoor storage, and also additional lighting and security cameras. And sorry, this rendering, we were trying to meet the cutoff, and that rendering with the fence line and the building, that should show a covered cantilever area as well. Terry, over to you.
Thank you. So that's the proposed site and our proposed renovations to the building. As it relates to operations, as I had said, if council approves the shelter plan and this site, then we would start to do the operational planning. The first piece that we would do would be to procure an operator for that site and build, as I had said earlier, the operations management plan. That plan would be in alignment with all of our standards and requirements for a shelter, and with the goal to ensure safety, dignity, and access to basic needs for all the clients of the shelter. We use a very principle-based approach in providing our housing services, and this shelter would be in keeping with those principles to be client-centered and accessible, to ensure safety, security, and well-being. We would have trauma-informed and culturally safe practices, would be housing-focused and outcomes-oriented. We would ensure we operate from a principle of harm reduction and have health-informed support services. Cooperation, collaboration, coordination would be hallmarks of our approach. And throughout, we would want to ensure transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. The support services that would be embedded into that operations plan include healthcare referrals, wellness checks, connection and referrals to community supports and services or support groups. There would be 24/7 staffing on the site, and the clients would be provided with meals daily. If council approves the plan, we group the activities that we would undertake immediately into these 8 steps. We would do that community selection and partnership formation. That is basically begin the neighborhood inclusion plan. We would hire the outreach workers. We would ensure the local governance was in place through a letter of commitment or whatever mechanism council would require to ensure that you were confident that we would have good, strong governance and coordination of the plan going forward. We also do something called encampment response planning, which our team would start to work more closely with not only community partners, but also the individuals who are in the current encampment, with the idea being that 100% of those individuals would be offered housing within the shelter, an idea to move them indoors when this shelter, if approved, comes on board. And that's an entire scope of work. We will have an accelerated timeline for completion of the shelter so that, as Amy says, when winter comes, we could be operational on that site. We also begin the moment people come indoors, we start doing that planning. We would start thinking right away about how the eventual closure of this shelter would occur and how we would be moving those individuals either into the shelter, the 20 shelter beds and the 40 units of supportive housing that are coming at Alfred Avenue down the road. We would begin that case planning immediately. And of course, we would have continuous monitoring and an eye on system improvement. The shelter would not be static the moment it comes online. We would continue if amendments need to be made to how we are operating based on feedback, particularly that could come from that neighborhood inclusion planning that I had talked about. If that informs a need for a change in practices, working with the partners, we would ensure that we matured our approach going forward.
Thank you. So Heart and Hearth is a temporary solution. It's a program that's temporary base. It's not for permanent housing. So what we're proposing here is the middle, right? To bring folks from the encampment into the temporary measure, which is the shelter in the middle on 3rd Avenue. This is temporary to reduce the homelessness while we work towards the permanent, which is the far right-hand side image of the transitional and supportive housing. So there we're, me and my team, along with Terry's team, we're working toward developing 40 supportive housing units and 20 permanent shelter spaces in the community on Alfred Avenue. The interim shelter will close when the Alfred Avenue development opens in late 2028. So the proposal is interim and it's bridging until the permanent housing is built. So I just wanted to use this slide to just outline some of the timelines and what we've done to date. So in April 2026, the proposed project information was shared. We also then held the May community open house and online Q&A. And right now, the June and July, that's where we're at right now with the municipal approvals and permitting and estimated renovation start. So if the proposal and the shelter plan is approved, then we would proceed to next steps, which is targeting late summer to introduce the operator to the community, and then in parallel work towards doing the renovations, applying for the permits. We've got a TUP application and a building permit application as next steps if the proposal is approved, and then we would target fall to winter to have the shelter open. So that concludes our presentation. So I wanted to say thank you for allowing us to present the proposed plan, and hopefully it provided enough detail on the proposed shelter plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Terry. So we will go next to questions from council. But I thought I would just preface that with a bit of a thank you for the work that you've put into this. This has been probably not a surprise or a surprise in your working lives, but you know, a proposal that came with challenges. And I appreciate that you've worked back and forth with us and the feedback we've had from the community. I know that that can be a challenge. You're working on a tight timeline, but definitely appreciate that extra effort that you've gone through with us and our staff to get to this point. So we'll go next to council questions, and I can do them randomly or I could just go round. I'm just going to start over here then. Councillor Leonard.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the presentation. You've answered a few of my questions. One in particular that I have that has brought up another question. You talk about the town participation in the operations management planning and the neighborhood inclusion and community integration. So I just would appreciate maybe you being a bit more specific in what role the municipality and councillors might play in that with regards to, like, would we help participate in structuring that deal or agreement, or would we be more of an advisory role?
Thank you. So the exact role that the municipality might play would be defined in the scope of how we map things out. So the town may choose to have more involvement, or they might choose to have monitoring and oversight responsibility, and both of those would be acceptable. The key responsibility obviously would be, as Amy said, any of the plans that we're proposing, we would bring forward and work with staff to ensure that those plans are approved. As it relates to operations down the road, if the municipality would like to have staff play a role in those, that would be fine. If they would prefer to receive minutes and notes and updates and monitor it, that would be appropriate too. But we would lay out that within the letter of commitment and the implementation of that commitment in the coming weeks if council approves the plan.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And it is helpful to me. And my main concern is residents and businesses in that area. As you know, we've met a couple of times. So I appreciate that feedback, and as a council, we could probably have that discussion later, but I do appreciate that that's an opportunity for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Leonard. Want to just go around, Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciated the rendition drawings and some of the changes there, but I just had a question that wasn't brought up, and then we've been asked this many times. Is there any budget in any of the projects for security, site security? I know there's been some other projects, not in this community, but in other places that's been added. Is there any budget there? I know the public would probably appreciate maybe some information if that's available.
So the most important element of ensuring a safe and secure site is the role the operator plays. The biggest element is client relationship. And so we want to make sure we acknowledge that the operator is the key element in that, and we would work with the operator to ensure that their staff have the training and the tools that they need to ensure that security can be addressed as it relates to client interaction or incidents involving clients. We typically, as it relates to security and the provision of security guards, which is contracted security services, which is often what people request. It's not something that we do within the planning. Quite frankly, we find that good operations make that a non-issue. So we don't include it up front. We have an occasion, as you mentioned, in other communities on a case-by-case basis looked at that. But in the vast majority of cases, it's not. It doesn't become an issue. It's not necessary. And so we don't build it in to the requirements or the initial planning.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Rabin?
No questions from me. I found the presentation quite robust. And I just want to say that I appreciate is watching along the journey, how the feedback has been integrated into this. So even after the community sessions, and I just think it's important to highlight how that has helped.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Councillor Bucama?
Thanks, Mayor Etchell. Just one quick question. The fabrications building with its present footprint, can it accommodate 25 beds, or does the building have to be added on to?
Yeah, it can accommodate. I think we're looking at bunks in the area to get up to the 24 bed count. Yeah, it's like open space with bunk beds.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bucama. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. Thank you so much for the presentation. You've included all the details, which is great. The letter of commitment, is it exclusive to the Heart and Hearth program?
We provide letters of commitment quite often. There is one specific to the Heart and Hearth program that we include in the plan as a template. We would work with municipality to review and address that. But there is a Heart and Hearth specific letter of commitment.
Excellent. And then on the Queen Street facing side of the building, will there be cameras installed? Is that part of the design or contract?
Yeah, we will go into a really robust understanding of what the security plan looks like. So once we go into the renovations, we'll make sure that we consider CPTED operator requirements. So we will go into depth of where cameras make sense, where it helps the operator for managing the site. So we do go into robust what security cameras are needed and
Awesome.
egress, controlled access points. Yeah, it's quite a big part of the agenda when we go into the renovation planning. Yeah.
Excellent. So just a comment, Your Worship, if I may. So while I'm in support of a community shelter and encouraged by that letter of commitment that's included as part of the Heart and Hearth program, I think what's missing is a clear documented path forward, including defined service levels and accountability between the province and council of how we propose that long-term strategy. So I like the slide that you talked about that said temporary. So I have a motion related to that will come later, Your Worship, if I may. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ray?
It sounds like it's part of the process, but when could the neighborhood expect information about how to participate in the neighborhood inclusion table?
So we would communicate that quite early. If council provides the approval, we communicate with the neighborhood. We would include information. Neighborhood inclusion planning will happen. We'll provide contact information, but the actual convening of the table would occur upon selection and putting the operator in place, because they would play a very key role in coordinating that work.
Thank you. And I, just like others, I'd like to thank you for listening to what we've asked for in terms of public consultation and in terms of changes to the building plan. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Just looking around if anyone missed a question. So I'm just going to say a couple of things to give people a chance to think if there was something missing. Just going back to the process that I outlined at the beginning of the meeting, once we've concluded this piece, we'll go on to the staff report, and then we won't be in dialogue with Amy and Terry again. So just as that red flag for council, if you're sitting on a question that you might want to ask. So with that said, I'll just, if there was anything else from either of you before we move on. Okay, then I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier. I do appreciate council have noted it as well. You have been very responsive to the challenges that we faced and the concerns that we are echoing, that we've heard through neighbors, we've heard through other people in the community across the spectrum of this issue. So not just the folks who are concerned for the immediate neighbors, and I'm concerned as well, but also for the folks that are trying to find a better situation for the people that are living challenged lives in the encampment and other places in town. So you've heard that full spectrum, And I appreciate the responsiveness and the attentiveness that you've given us and others. And that was demonstrated in the slide that you put up earlier, reflecting the community consult. So thank you for that. And I'm going to save the rest of my comments for the council deliberation. You're welcome to stay with us. I hope you do. If you feel like leaving, of course, it's up to you. And the same for the gallery. So we'll move into the council discussion now. And we'll go on to the staff report. So thank you very much, Terry and Amy. And I said I was giving council a chance. Was there another question? That whole long thing was meant to provide. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you. Forgot why I was doing that. Okay, council. So now we have a different numbering system for this evening. We're at the staff report, which is item 8.1. We have the report from Mr. Doer with the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve. And so maybe with the patience of council, before we have any motions, I'll just allow there to be a roundtable again. And then after that, if there's motions, we'll go to there, including the recommendation from staff. So I'm just going to go back to Councillor Leonard if there's anything you wanted to add or comment at this point.
I guess what I'll say is I would feel much more comfortable. I guess, a lot of this process, and I have to commend BC Housing actually for listening, as you had mentioned before. But a lot of this process is sort of dependent on trust. And so I would feel more comfortable if we sort of had some sort of documentation that said, these are the steps and this is where council is included and can provide feedback. And these are the expectations from BC Housing, just so it's documented.
Thanks, Councillor Leonard. Councillor Elliott.
Nothing other than what Councillor Leonard already said. I think some clarity, and I think people will appreciate the transparency of the whole process if that happens.
Thank you, Councillor Raven.
So this is just for comments on the project and the staff report, correct? Okay.
I think we're going as we have the staff recommendation in front of us. I just thought this is something where council might appreciate having the opportunity for the roundtable. And then in keeping with process, I'll probably ask someone to put the motion on the floor and we'll go from there.
Okay, no, so just, yeah. This has never been an easy subject. I think we've been working on this for a very long time, and not just at the specific location, but just in general. Before my time on council, this was an issue. During my time on council, the amount of time we've spent around this table working on this, and then to see an opportunity arise. I think that this is something that we have to fully participate in. I understand that there are frustrations and trepidation from people in the community. I understand that. But we have to be very careful to not take those experiences and make them stand in the way of an opportunity. I think this is one of the best projects that we've had come forward. I appreciate that we've had the opportunity to have direct input. And I think that this is actually something that will help get rid of some of those challenges. We had the temporary winter shelter and we have the data to support that it does help with a lot of the disorder and the concerns that the community members brought forward. Even at the open house, some people brought up statistics or like their personal experiences. And I asked them, did that happen before the shelter or when the shelter was in operation? And everyone said it happened before. So it does show that the shelter does take that pressure off. When people have access to stability, they're able to do better. Also, the financial implications, our community or our council has spent a lot of money and time taking care of the overnight sheltering location. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on security, cleanups, you name it. Then there's also staff time that has been used, and having the opportunity to be able to make a step forward in shutting that down and move on to something else and free up that very important staff time, I think is absolutely incredible. One thing that was in the delegation package was the BB Harm Reduction Society success story. I don't know if people had a chance to read that, but there was a little paragraph, I believe is on page 9. And it was that one person who accessed services at the shelter was in Tent City for 6 years. He successfully got into treatment this winter and completed a 3-month program. Sorry. He's now living with family and working on a plan to start a small business selling his art work. He's been volunteering with a grassroots outreach program and hopes to stay involved in our society to inspire others in the community to take a similar path. That's one success story. That's one life changed. And that's the thing is, I think if we have a shelter in place to bridge to when we can get to Alfred Avenue, we can have a lot more of those stories. People just need the chance. People just need the stability to be able to get their life back on track.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Councillor Bukama.
Thank you, Mayor Ettrell. I'm very glad that BC Housing is putting an 8-foot high fence around the entire property. I think that's really important to the neighborhood. And I also hope that a lot of thought will be put into who the operator will be, because I think if there is a good, solid operator of the shelter, I think that'll go a long ways to alleviating some of the concerns of the neighborhood. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bukama. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ray.
Pardon me, I'm going to say a lot of words like I usually do. I've been dealing with the whole encampment homeless since the minute I got on council. First, it was behaviors before Beauville Square was built, then we built Beauville Square, and then there was behaviors there. And it's been very easy to focus on the behaviors and to forget that we also have an obligation. We represent everybody. So to be able to get some people helped and into housing is important. Some of the letters and some of the things you hear, people have to remember that the behaviors that seem to be allowed by society, that's not in council's control. Council has been given the task of trying to manage a situation that's best managed by other levels of government. We didn't ask for the encampment. I don't think anybody here would choose an encampment, probably including most of the people that live in the encampment. We're only able to control what we can control. Mrs. Breedenhoff's letter says just because one court said, that's how courts work. One court says something, and until it's defeated in a higher court, that's the rules you have to live with. We have to have an overnight camping place if we don't have sufficient shelter. I'm going to support the shelter. I think the BC Housing has listened. I'm going to be very interested in holding, and I do have faith that we will, but I think council still has a role in holding the operators and BC Housing responsible for what goes on at that shelter. It's going to be a little bit different from the homeless or the winter shelter. But I think one thing we have to know is that this isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to help some people. But the behaviors that go on with drug use, some of the crime that's associated, I'm hoping if that the encampment will get closed. I think council should press that very hard, including perhaps, I was going to make a motion tonight, but I don't think tonight's the right night. But we might have to spend some money on some lawyers because otherwise we're just going to continue to add things to the community and we'll still have a homeless shelter, or not a homeless shelter, a homeless encampment where, let's face it, there are some people that use that homeless encampment as a place to conduct criminal enterprise. And that's what I'm hoping that this shelter will help with. But I think about the neighborhood that it's moving into, and they had a bit of a rough winter. But I think about the businesses that have been across the street from the homeless encampment, we don't hear much from them anymore, but they've put up with this for a long time, and there's been a lot of bad things happen. I'm not going to name the businesses or what happened, but they've had a rough go, and they've told us about it too. And at the end of the day, this is going to be for 2 years, maybe a little bit while we transition, but then it's going to all move back into this neighborhood, and the businesses are going to have some of the same problems. The problems don't go away even if you have supportive housing and a shelter. There's still going to be problems. There's still going to be problems no matter what. I mean, you think of any problem you're going to solve, you're never going to solve it entirely, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be proper services for the citizens. It's always an ongoing work. So I'm going to support this with the hope that we close the encampment. And I think, you know, council definitely needs to make sure that we're making sure that the neighbors are included in the neighborhood inclusion table, and that if they have problems that they don't think are being addressed, that council needs to follow up with that as well. It's not an easy decision to make, but I think from the last, since COVID, we know what doesn't work. Having an encampment doesn't work. So it's one of those situations where neither solution is perfect, but I think we need to try something else because the encampment's not working.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. I'm going to say a few things too. Assuming that the motion is put on the floor, I will support the motion, the recommendation from staff. And, you know, I said thank you to the folks who presented from BC Housing tonight, and I'm going to extend that up the ladder and also state that I want to issue thanks to the Minister of Housing. It's not that easy for a town our size to get notice in this sort of a situation. When the province created programs to deal with encampments and this extraordinary issue around homelessness and the unhoused, those benefits were first extended to what was described as mid-sized communities, Kamloops, Kelowna, Nanaimo, where the problems are outsized, and that's where the attention went. It took a lot of effort to get noticed in a community our size, 5,500 people, that we had an extraordinary problem. And, you know, council and staff have worked on this, but I have to recognize the response of Minister Boyle when she called and said, you know, there was an opportunity for Smithers and Heart and Heart. And so I think, you know, we all know what it feels like to have challenges issued to us in this elected role, and others do as well. So I just want to note that the minister made an effort, and it's gotten us to this point, and we wouldn't have gotten here without that. So extending the thank you to the minister and to the folks at BC Housing. Councillor Ray talked about what he remembers here in terms of people who are living rough lives, unhoused. My memory is not as long as Councillor Ray's because I've not been at the table as long, but I've been here long enough to remember the community being disturbed over a proposal that was being called a gazebo, where we would just provide a little bit of shelter for people who needed a place to gather, to socialize, recognizing that community requires socializing. We didn't get through that. When COVID happened, council and other agencies in town created the temporary situation down on Tatlow Road. We recognized that there were people who couldn't go home, which was the order during COVID, that people should go home while people were unhoused. So this organization plus not-for-profits in the town, along with BC Housing, created something in a temporary manner that didn't last. It got to be warmer. People started to adapt to what was happening during the pandemic. Eventually, a tent went up adjacent to Beauville Square, and then folks moved over to where they are now. It started small. I think in our first winter, Councillor Ray would remember this as well, we went to the point of getting an ATCO trailer, trying to deal with what was then a small group. And then, of course, the population outgrew that, and we've been living with a tent encampment ever since, making some changes to it, having temporary fencing, the hardening of the site. So I think this table has been trying to deal with this issue, including with roundtables with community organizations, inviting people to be part of the solution. This is, as one of our staff said earlier today, the proverbial wicked problem. If it was easy to solve, someone would have solved it. This is a difficult problem, dealing with folks who are living challenging lives, who are unhoused, many of whom have addiction issues, who have mental health issues, or all of the above. What we have is an opportunity to do a little better than that, to make a better offering for the folks that are living rough lives, and also, I think, to improve the situation for the community. So there is an opportunity in front of us. I agree with Councillor Ray. It comes, of course, with challenges and risk, the greatest, and I am moved by the concerns of the neighbors. You know, there isn't any place in this community where, even though the folks, you know, most people I've spoken to agree there ought to be a shelter, and most people don't want it near them. It's an understandable human reaction. This is a small community. There's not a place where we could put this that would be seen to be ideal. We have an opportunity in front of us with the building, the proposal that's in front of us. And I think it is something that, you know, I feel that I'm definitely going to support it. We heard some things about going forward. Councillor Leonard raised it, I think Councillor Patterson. How are we going to work together? So I heard the term letter of commitment. I think that's something we'll probably pursue. We can get through the first motion first. We don't need a letter of commitment if we're not doing it. So we'll do this piece first, and then we'll move on to the next steps. You know, things that I think speak to the neighbors. We heard about fence, we heard about cantilever, we heard about the neighborhood inclusion. This is going to be an ongoing discussion. We've got a couple of years to manage until we get to the Alfred Avenue project. This is going to take kind of all hands on deck all the way through. We'll be learning as we go. The situations that have arisen in other communities may arise here, but they're probably going to have our own take on things. So it will require the people at this table, our staff, BC Housing, the operator, and the community to work on this together. Maybe I'll just stop there. Oh, actually, I do have one other thing to say. As frustrating as this is for all of us, now I'm going to go down your path. You know, we have met over time different individuals who live there. And we can't forget, as frustrated as neighbors have been, as business owners have been with the behaviors, that every person over there is someone's child, someone's sibling, someone's parent. And we have to remember that. And we probably all know individuals who were caught in that maelstrom. And if they were our relative, we would want someone to extend a hand. And that's the opportunity we have in front of us today, is to remember that piece and then be vigilant around it to make sure we're doing the best we can for the people in the shelter and the people outside the shelter. This is a community, and we're going to have to do this together. Now I'm done. Okay, would someone like to have one other comment or move the motion? Councillor Raven, you're moving the motion in Mr. Dewar's report. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ray seconds. Discussion to the motion. Okay, I think we've all had our piece. I'm going to call the vote if you're ready. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, I think there's some follow-up discussion. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor Atchell. So one of the biggest pieces for me that sort of I really grappled with and how I was going to vote this evening was, I think back to our orientation around our accountability for long-term planning. So my motion is specific to that. I feel that we're missing a clear documented path forward, including defined service levels, channeling my inner Christina Benti, which includes accountability from both the province and council on how we propose to deliver that long-term strategy. So that's both to support the people that are accessing those services. They deserve stable programs to improve their well-being, but equally to all the community members who deserve transparency and responsiveness in our long-term approach and confidence in that we're going to deliver on what is being promised. And I think this is particularly important when I read the staff report, considering that we're spending $766,000 on the temporary overnight shelter. And I just think it's incredibly important for us to establish in writing such as an MOU or other agreement with the province, to clearly articulate that phased approach. So that would have the Heart and Hearth program, which is committed to be temporary, the removal of the temporary night over shelter area, and then the transition to the long-term supportive housing that includes a shelter, then the removal of the temporary Heart and Hearth program. I think to not have that in writing puts us in an incredibly vulnerable position, especially financially. So with that, my motion is that council direct staff to negotiate an agreement with the province that describes the phased approach to develop the interim Heart and Hearth shelter, removal of the temporary overnight shelter area, transition to the long-term supportive housing, and removal of the temporary Heart and Hearth shelter. Thank you.
2 questions. First, Ms. McKinley, did you get that? Okay. Fine, then I'm just going to look for a seconder. Counselor Leonard seconds. Okay, discussion. I'm just going to look.
If I can.
Counselor Leonard.
That's a bit more robust than I was thinking, because I am more specific to the shelter, but I appreciate Councillor Patterson's thoughts around a long-term vision. So I'm obviously seconded it, so I support that. I think it's a responsible move for us to do and to sort of think through those steps, and I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Counselor Leonard. Counselor Raven.
I'm a bit concerned that it is a bit too prescriptive. I would have actually preferred to just do a referral to staff for them to bring back, because I think there's perhaps some things that might be missed, and I don't want to not get a full picture.
Thanks, Counselor Raven. Anyone else? Counselor Ray.
I'm happy with it as it stands. Staff can always come back. And certainly if staff wants to say something tonight before we vote. But I actually think that the temporary nature of this building is very key to me. That's the key piece. I think we'll find that the province isn't as keen as closing the encampment as we are. And I think that's something we're going to have to push. But I would hope that if staff went away, had a meeting about it tomorrow and there was problems, that they would come to us before approaching the province.
Thanks, Counselor Ray. Anyone else? Counselor Elliott?
Yeah, I'll support the motion as well. I think it's good to set these goals and it makes it more clear. It kind of puts the ball in our court as well to push some of these things ahead. Like Councillor Ray said, that maybe the province isn't as keen to move ahead and to remove the temporary overnight shelter. But I think if we have that goal in mind, which I think we do, this puts it out on the table in front of us and holds our feet to it, I guess you could say. So I do support it.
Thanks, Counselor Elliott. Counselor Bucama?
Thanks, Mayor Hutrell. I kind of feel the same way as Councillor Raven, where I would prefer to see a staff report. I don't know if I'm quite ready to vote on this tonight.
Thanks, Counselor Bucama. Mr. Dewar, did you have a take on this? I'm going to actually, no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say staff's willing to work with the will of council. It's one that certainly we would have conversations and bring back any information and certainly advise as best as we can.
Thanks, Mr. Dewar. Counselor Patterson, can you read the front of the motion again before I comment? Actually, read the whole thing. Thanks.
No worries. That council directs staff to negotiate an agreement with the province that describes the phased approach to develop the interim Heart and Hearth shelter, removal of the temporary overnight shelter area, transition to the long-term supportive housing, and removal of the temporary Heart and Hearth shelter. Thank you.
Thanks, Counselor Patterson. So what I heard this time is that this, you said with the province. And so my question really is, what we heard from BC Housing is that there is a letter of commitment that works on Heart and Hearth. So my position is I would like to see Heart and Hearth move unfettered. And so the reason I asked for your motion back is it seems like we would be able to achieve the letter of commitment regarding Heart and Hearth, and this is separate. Is that correct? Okay. So I'm of a mind as well. I wouldn't mind a staff reflection on that. Because it linked in your motion, Heart and Hearth, with all of those other things. And we've just approved Heart and Hearth. Heart and Hearth will come with a letter of a commitment. Where my mind is stuck is whether or not there's a tether in there that might be a tripping point. So back to you, maybe you can provide some clarity.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that's why I struggled in the level of detail that I would put in such an agreement, just reflecting on some of the struggles that we've had thus far in both managing the temporary overnight shelter area and the temporary winter shelter. So I kept it extremely high level to allow staff that opportunity to come back and provide more information around what other communities have done around similar initiatives. So I just didn't put any details whatsoever and just kept it at an agreement.
Okay. Councillor Leonard.
I just want to add to your thought process. I do support it and thinking about it more because I know every one of us has struggled with this timeline and had questions around it, wondering if one would actually successfully close the other. We've had a lot of questions from community about that, whether we were adding or replacing, right? So I think that this is a good way for us to get there.
Councillor Raven, then Councillor Ray.
Okay, just a question through to staff because under my understanding of this program is it is actually only for 3 years. Like that has been what I've heard from day one for the proposed Heart to Hearth.
Yes, my understanding from what we've heard from BC Housing is that the funding would only be up for a maximum of 3 years. And additionally, I would say that the proposal does require a temporary use permit. So that would be a tool for future council to make any decisions in terms of ending if there was any intention of moving forward.
Yeah, because that's the part that I always come back to is it seems like there's the built-in 3 years regardless, like we have a town with a temporary use permit, that's a town triggered timeline. And then through the Heart and Hearth, it's a 3-year funding model. So you almost have triggers on both sides for 3 years. So that's kind of for me where I guess I'm not as stuck on whether or not this is considered temporary. It at least should come back to us regardless after the 3 years for the temporary use permit. And also with the construction of the supportive housing going in beside us, that is a significantly larger building that would be able to offset the little fabrications building. I just don't want to trip over an agreement when to me that seems fairly set out. I don't want to slow the process at all. That's just my kind of thought process with this, which is why I wanted to do a referral to staff rather than make something too prescriptive because I would hate to start leveling on also different projects and different things.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. I'm going to offer a suggestion. I'm going to go to Councillor Ray. A bridge might be a motion to defer or postpone until staff can report back. But before that happens, I'll go to Councillor Ray.
I was going to move an amendment. The amendment being, and that such negotiations to be preceded by a staff report to council on possible steps in the process.
Did you make that amendment? Are you moving? Is there a seconder? Councillor Buckham seconds. Questions to the amendment only. Councillor Patterson.
If I may, Your Worship, may I just get that repeated? Apologies, Deputy Mayor Ray.
Sorry, and that such negotiations are to be preceded by a staff report to council on possible steps in the process.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Now questions to the amendment. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was under the assumption that that's how it would go. So just the last piece is just tripping me up. Are we saying steps in the process being the broader housing process or process to negotiate the agreement?
My understanding from Councillor Ray's amendment is that the motion, if the amendment is passed and the motion is passed, it will take it into staff's hands, who will report back to us on all the things contained in the emotions, in the motion rather, not emotion. So that this is the same mechanism as postponement. It's going to staff first. They're going to report back to us on how this works. Mr. Dewar.
Yeah, and just to hopefully clarify, but right now, my understanding would be that council has already moved to approve the shelter, and this would be periphery to the actual movement of that progressing. So staff would reach out to the province and BC Housing and look at what kind of agreement we can develop that would outline the temporary nature of the new fabrications building shelter and the long-term commitment to develop the Alfred Ave shelter, which would then ultimately, shut down or, create capacity where we could close the temporary fabrications building shelter. Is that correct?
I'm going to speculate that part of the desire is laying out a plan where we could close the encampment as well. Okay. I think it's seconded already. Councillor Buckham has seconded. Yeah, so the amendment was moved and seconded. You're good? Okay. Ms. McKinley, you're okay? Okay, and Councillor Ray, you have the exact words? Because.
Yeah, I have them written down.
Okay. Okay, comments to the amendment, Councillor Ray?
Yeah, just to say that I think, I wouldn't want to send staff right off to negotiate, but also that I think it's probably more complicated than we think it is.
Okay, Councillor Raven.
Yeah, so I appreciate the amendment because that was my big concern is this is basically referral to staff to get some insight and then we can figure out steps forward. So thank you so much to Councillor Ray for the amendment.
Anyone else to the amendment? Okay, everyone's clear on what they're voting on? On the amendment, all in favor? Opposed? And the amendment is carried unanimously. So the motion now with the new wording, any further discussion? So the thing I just want to state, and it's been stated a few times, is this does not, it does not get in the way of the recommendation that was previously adopted. So we have accepted the presentation from BC Housing. The shelter can go ahead, and this is actually some future work for council to consider all the sort of temporary natures of everything else around us. But we're able to go ahead. There will be a separate letter of commitment as Terry and Amy described for the shelter project. As long as we all agree with that. Did you have your hand up, Mr. Dewar? Okay, anyone else? Have I missed any staff that are? Okay, so to the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. That is going to bring us to the end of the public meeting. And Mr. Schroeder, can you just help me so that we have a few minutes of a break here? Can we just?
We can move to a recess immediately, or council could actually just move to the closed meeting, and then we could use that as a recess.
Okay, then I'm going to do that. I'll move us into closed, and then we can still have a recess. Okay, so that we get a bit more of this process done. I am going to move that pursuant to section 1992 of the community charter, the special open meeting of council be closed to the public to permit discussions concerning one item under section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And one item under section 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and a First Nation or a prescribed Indigenous entity, or between a First Nation or a prescribed Indigenous entity and a third party. And a seconder, please. Councillor Ray. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And now we'll just take a 5-minute recess. So if there's questions from the gallery, we'll come back.